All right, welcome to our webinar. This is Greg Fossen, the founder, principal analyst at X-Media Research. I'm joined today by Colin Dixon, founder of nScreenMedia, Noreen Hafez, director of global product marketing from Akamai, and Ido Shai, director of product marketing, video and OTT from Kaltura. We're happy to have you all with us today, and we're excited for this particular discussion that we're going to have. One of the most important advances in the television and entertainment industry is the ability for content owners, broadcasters, and platform operators to deliver live broadcast quality streams. And while this does present some technical challenge, this is allowing the entire media and entertainment ecosystem the opportunity to create experiences which we might call better than TV experiences, and it reimagining the media distribution strategies and tapping into innovative new monetization opportunities. So as I mentioned, for our panel discussion today, we have Ido from Kaltura, Noreen from Akamai, and as always, we have super analyst Colin Dixon, founder of nScreenMedia, who's going to be presenting some of his insights on what's going on with delivering broadcast quality live streaming, some of the challenges and opportunities, and he'll also be leading our two panelists through the discussion today. Before I turn the time over to Colin, I want to just do one or two quick logistics items with everybody so that we know how the webinar will go. If you're in the audience, feel free to use your GoToWebinar interface anytime to ask questions. You can ask questions. We will get them. Colin and I will try to make sure that we address your questions as quickly as possible throughout the course of the discussion. If for some reason we don't get to it, don't panic. We'll leave a few minutes at the end for some dedicated Q&A, and we'll try to get to it at that point. We love your questions. Keep them coming, and we'll try to get to them. So without further ado, I want to turn the time over to Colin Dixon, and take it away.
Thanks, Greg. Yes, very pleased to be here to talk to you about live online. This is such an important topic, and I wanted to give you, before we get into the discussion with Noreen and Ido, I wanted to give you all an idea of just how important live is becoming online. Recently, Akamai and I and Nube Media, we ran a survey, and we actually went out and talked to people who are planning on actually launching online video services or have already launched online video services. We wanted to get an idea of the shape of their service, what they're planning on doing, and here's what we found. And this actually was no surprise, 79% said that they were going to do SVOD. Of course, you know, we all know everybody wants to do SVOD. It's a nice, easy business model. Netflix is proving it works extremely well. But look at this. Nearly 2/3 of our respondents said that they were planning on doing live streaming. I think that's pretty amazing. What it tells us very clearly is, look, live is becoming mainstream. People have enough confidence now in the web as a platform to deliver that they're comfortable doing live. And the great thing is, they are not just planning on making this a one-hit wonder, doing the occasional live stream. They're planning on doing a lot. So we went on and actually asked them, okay, so tell us, how often are you planning on providing live event streams? Well, amazingly, nearly half plan to provide live streams on at least a daily basis. And look at that at the very top there. 17% told us that they're basically going to have live streams running 24/7. I think that's pretty amazing. What sort of things are they planning on doing? Well, this is not just mainstream sports. This is everything. We're talking about local and school sports, religious services, conferences and meetings, government open door meetings, and on and on. We saw some fascinating people replying to our survey from all sorts of walks of life who have live events that they want to bring to potential audiences. Now, many of these events, people are actually planning to deliver several events at once. Nearly half plan to stream more than one event at a time. 28% said 2 to 5 simultaneous events, and 18% said more than six or more rather, simultaneous events, and 53% are only planning to do one event at a time. I think that, again, I think that is pretty amazing statistic, particularly when you bear in mind how hard it is to do live well, and that's the subject of our discussion this morning. And funnily enough, I was moderating a panel last year with Roger Lynch from Sling TV, and he made this comment about live. I don't know if you remember last year, Sling had a bit of a tough time with the NCAA basketball tournament, meeting demand there. And he basically said, look, doing live is challenging. It's a lot more challenging than on demand. Don't underestimate the difficulty of doing live TV. And I think there is a danger for us to underestimate that. What are some of the dangers? Well, scalability is tough. And that is absolutely something we'll be talking about this morning. Latency, this delay behind actual live can be a real problem, particularly when you're doing something like a Super Bowl or something like that, where many people are also watching on TV. And resolution. You know, if you're doing sports, you better have HD resolution, because that's what people are looking for now, and they expect it to be delivered. And there really is no room for error. You freeze that picture at the wrong time, and you lose a customer forever. So that's a sort of preamble to give you the sort of shape of things as we see them in the live world. A lot of people are coming. We're going to see a lot of live services going forward. So why don't we start off with our discussion. I want to bring Ido in right away. And Ido, tell us, live is often more expensive to produce and more complicated. So why should people invest in it?
Right. Thank you very much, Colin. It's great to be here. So, I mean, what we've seen is that live essentially is very, very valuable, both for the audience, which are obviously the most important factor in all of this, but also for publishers. Simply, you can just drive more traffic for people who are looking for live streams, and then you can do some interesting things with it. First of all, you can do some interactivity. So if you're doing a live stream, you have a live Q&A, or you can actually interact with the people, which is something that audiences really, really like. You can also use live in the context of SVOD services to create some kind of a premium tier. So I think everybody agrees that free is the best price to put on an SVOD service. Not everybody can do that. So you want to have an extra tier there to upgrade to. And what do you do? How do you create this premium content? So creating live streams and exclusive content delivered live is a really great way to do it, as well as pay-per-view. And we've seen some of our customers, for example, offering a lot of content, VOD content for free, but then some live pay-per-view broadcast as well. You can also expect longer engagement with live, which is really appealing to advertisers. We've seen YouTube switching recently in its way to kind of measure the quality and the value of the content. And they're looking more about engagement and less about actual views. And live always drives longer engagement. People just love watching it for longer amounts of time. Another one that I would mention here is the social footprint, which is really amazing. Like you've seen festivals like Coachella, when they start live streaming, it's all over the social networks. It's on Facebook, it's on Twitter, it's on Snapchat. And you can really see the numbers kind of scale up very, very quickly. Sometimes you see with news events that something is happening and people are kind of rushing and to view the content. And these actually social footprints they actually stay after the live delivery. So it actually gives you some juice when it comes to search and optimization engines as well. And finally, I think live is still a differentiator. And the fact that we're talking about live today is, I think, because it's difficult to do still. But if you are able to do it, and you are able to do quality live streams and make them interesting and high quality and low latency and all that, people will look at your video service differently. And there are greater chances that it will come back, that it will subscribe. So I think having that sort of content on your website will really drive more audiences.
Indeed, and you know, so some very good reasons why people should be doing live. I think the engagement thing is just a really important aspect. I don't think you get any engagement like you get from a live event. Getting people interested in a sports event, and they will stay with that broadcast the whole way. But the big question is, particularly when it comes to sports, is live. Is the web ready for prime time? Noreen, what do you think? Is it ready?
Thank you, Colin. Yes, absolutely. This is something that Akamai is heavily invested in, obviously. Just to piggyback a little bit on Ido's answer to your original question about is live, you know, why invest in live in the first place? I mean, at the end of the day, if we think about it, the consumers are driving this demand. I don't think a lot of our broadcasters and publishers have that flexibility and choice to not invest in something like live. And as a matter of fact, you know, if you go to Europe, BBC and Sky, and this is something normal that they've been doing live for a long time online. It is something that's catching up in the U.S. I mean, it's all obviously coming with the larger broadband. So the average bit rate, for example, these days in the U.S. is about 12 megabits per second. Worldwide, it's about 5 megabits per second. So audiences now have access to that speed and that internet. They are requiring those better experiences, those OTT experiences. So as you can see from this slide, we've seen an uptick in audiences getting bigger and their expectations for quality is getting higher. People are engaging and watching for much longer periods of time. And the bit rates, because of the codecs and technology being available now, are much higher with broadband and infrastructure in place. And the end users, at the end of the day, the end users are in charge. And I don't think we can, all of us, we cannot afford not to invest in live at this time. And we actually, if you go to the next slide, we've seen this on our network. So Akamai is very well known for providing the infrastructure for delivering live events like the Super Bowl, like the World Cup, the Olympics, and a lot of other different events. So at Akamai, we've been tracking these metrics that are key determinants of quality. And we've seen that these are reflected in Akamai's live events. So for example, here with the Super Bowl, we saw an uptick in unique viewers that have gone up almost 2 times in the last 2 years, between 2015 and 2016. And the average viewing time was up significantly also year over year, was starting at 47 minutes, then 84.2, and now at 101. And if you think about it, I believe the average person in the U.S. now watches television, broadcast television, for about 286 minutes per day. So if you think about just the Super Bowl being streamed online was 101 minutes in 2016, that was half of the viewing time for that day for that person. And of course, bit rates. We're seeing an uptick in bit rates, which means the quality is getting better and better year over year.
Yeah, yes, indeed, and that's actually really surprising, Noreen. That engagement time, 101 minutes, that really illustrates so well how you just don't get engagement better than you get with live, right? And the other surprising thing is the boost in bit rate. Goodness, we're now up to 4.5 megabits on average. So that means that pretty much everybody is getting an HD experience, right?
Right, exactly, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm looking at some of the comments from the audience, and somebody reminded me that like NBC Sports during the last Sochi Olympics did 32 simultaneous live channels. That and the comment is it requires a lot of attention. I think that's absolutely true. So let me turn to you. Let's talk about the state of live online. What's going on there?
So we see that it's actually pretty good, and we've seen that the numbers that Noreen just shared with us, and the fact that you can bring an average bitrate of around 4.5 megabytes per second on average. That's really key for sports, and for a long time, the barrier for live was that there was just not enough great content out there streaming live on the internet, and I think that's quickly changing. So we saw the Super Bowl. We're seeing with some of Kaltura's customers the championships league in Europe is being streamed over OTT in some services. So it really doesn't get any more premium than that. And so I think in that sense, people are they understand that good content is now available via OTT, and I think that's really important. Also, it's really much easier and cheaper to produce user-generated content, and we see a lot of social networks such as Facebook, as YouTube, as Snapchat, obviously Twitter, kind of introducing live in a whole different way, and that again kind of re-educates people a little bit about the role of live in online streaming. I think there's also very strong monetization tools now these days with the ability to charge per one live stream. So you don't really need much in terms of infrastructure of the billing to create, for example, a live event that you think might be interesting for other people to join remotely and then charge for that. We talked about the social platforms. Also, DRM and scalability is much easier than before. It's not as expensive, and it's much easier. There are obviously some hurdles still. I think it's going to be a long time before we'll see 4K for live. There's a lot of effort to do that, but I think in the near future we will see HDR for live because it's much less CPU intensive and bandwidth intensive. So for sports, the image quality that we'll be able to get for OTT delivery using HDR, high dynamic range, will improve, and people, again, will have a great alternative, sometimes even better than TV, actually, to watch content live on the web. And I think also virtual reality is kind of has the same issues as 4K because of the bandwidth that is required to do virtual reality live and with very high bit rates. Is very challenging. There's still going to be, I think it's going to take some time before we're actually going to see virtual reality in 4K for sure, but even in lower bit rates. So that is something that we need to be mindful. And also device fragmentation. I mean, it's true for everything that is OTT related, that there are always older devices out there. There are always some annoying SDKs that you need to think about. Live doesn't always behave like VOD when you come to monetize it with ads, for example, and also when you think about DRM. So device fragmentation is still something that we're looking into at Kaltura and trying to make a sense of it all and trying to make it much easier for publishers to use live.
Indeed. And Noreen, let me just ask you, one of the things I've noticed in the Akamai State of the Internet reports is that the number of people that have enough bandwidth on their broadband to receive 4K has actually increased quite a lot, right? We've seen quite a big increase of people with 25 megabits or higher, and that's a worldwide phenomenon, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's something that we monitor on a regular basis, and that's so like I said before, we've seen an average uptick. So now within the U.S., people are up to 12 megabits per second in terms of bit rates, and it's constantly growing. This is not a number that I think, again, driven by consumers and their demand. You know, everything online right now is really matched up with broadcast quality. When people are watching on their Roku, on their Apple TVs, on all of those, you know, set-top boxes, their smart TVs and Fire TVs, all of those are compared, and you know, there's a baseline comparison to traditional broadcast. So that quality expectation is there. You know, new online video providers are generating content at or exceeding the codec and the bitrate quality for traditional TV. We're now in a situation where the broadcasters are trying to optimize the bandwidth and every bit, while the content publishers are pushing for higher and new formats like UHD and HDR, exceeding the traditional broadcast experience. So definitely the broadband has to be in that place, and that's why, because it's in that, we've gotten to this point, the expectations are higher. And as a matter of fact, talking about 4K, yes, we agree that 4K is still a ways off, and there's still a lot of things that need to happen for everybody to be adopting 4K, but we at Akamai just streamed one of the very first live 4K events, sporting events in April, that had a really high success rate in terms of all of the quality metrics that we were measuring with bit rates and amount of viewing time and all of that. And it's something that, going back to the social media phenomenon, it had a tremendous positive impact on social media as well, in terms of how people notice the difference in quality.
So let's come back to the scale issue now. I think that's a really important question. And Noreen, you know, isn't it just the case that I just schedule enough resources for the broadcast that I'm doing and I'm done? And is it that easy?
Unfortunately, it's not, especially with live events. I mean, you know, Akamai's mission has been and is to ensure the quality at every step in the live workflow by focusing on things like planning, like making sure there's high availability in traffic peaks. There's an end-to-end visibility. There's you know, short time to resolutions. If there's any unforeseen rerouting issues because of congestions or lack of availability of certain you know, certain networks, all of that needs to be taken into account. I mean, Akamai has been purposely built. The architecture of Akamai has been purposely built to meet those types of challenges, and it's something that keeps growing more and more. It's not something that can be built overnight. It's very complex. It's very costly. Having a global footprint with the intelligent algorithm built in that automatically reroutes the traffic based on needs is really essential, and that's where Akamai focuses with our, you know, different 200,000 plus servers around the world, our 1,400 networks across all these different countries. That's something we have what's called the NOC, the Network Operations Control Center, that is actually available at Akamai's headquarters in Cambridge, as well as in other global locations across the world, to monitor the network conditions across the country and across the world to make sure that we are, you know, we can mitigate or see any of these unforeseen, you know, things that might happen during a live event.
It's definitely, that's probably one of the biggest challenges of live, right? It's the fact that it's so variable. You could have an event that doesn't draw that many folks, and then for some reason a whole bunch of people come. You know, you can think of like live news, for example, where there's breaking news. You can have a massive surge. It's really tough dealing with that type of surge and scheduling enough resources, right?
Absolutely, yeah. With social media these days, with popular content going viral, you never know what the expectation is. And, we have a lot of customers who come to us and say, well, I don't really care about the scale because I am focused on this region. But these days, if you really care about your brand, yes, I understand the focus in a specific region, but with all of the infrastructure that's being built around social networks and all that's going on right now, whether it's Facebook or any other network, there is an expectation now by your viewers to be able to get your content and get it in a broadcast quality at least like broadcast, if not exceeding the broadcast quality anywhere in the world. So if you have people who are traveling from that country and still want to be able to access that content, or if you have people who live abroad but still are interested in the content because of language or cultural things, they still need to be able to access that content. And that is reflective on everybody's brand. So, having a global network and infrastructure that supports those peaks and requests is really essential these days.
And one question from the audience, they state quite rightly, 4 million viewers is good, but it's nowhere near the sort of prime time peaks that we're seeing. Are we getting towards the point where we can handle Super Bowl size audiences, real Super Bowl, TV Super Bowl audiences online? And if not, what's the sort of path to getting there?
Sure. If you want me to take, so if you go to slide 17, we've been monitoring our network, and Akamai, when it comes to scale on the Akamai platform, we've seen that traffic is growing at a rate of 60% annually. And if that growth continues at this rate, traffic would grow by a factor of more than 10 by the end of the decade. So if you do the math, this means we're typically delivering at 34 terabytes per second these days. It would mean we would have to deliver at least 340. Normally, with these exponential growth calculations, the rate of growth slows over time. But we've even seen good reasons to believe that it's going to accelerate because of OTT, because of social media, because of all of these other things. And we've seen people like Cisco and TDG Research predicting even higher than that at 600 terabits per second or 7,000. Tom Layton, who's our CEO, has said, however you look at it, it's orders of magnitude beyond what we have today. So that's absolutely correct that we are not in a place where we can scale just yet. But that's the more reason why we are focused, especially, Akamai is so focused on innovating and making sure that we can scale and we can get to the point where we can deliver on any type of, live content.
So actually, that's a good transition. Why don't we talk a little bit about what some of the key trends are that are driving live streaming? Ido, why don't we turn to you? Tell us what are some of those trends? Ido, are you still with us?
Sorry, I kept myself on mute for a bit too long.
That's okay.
Yeah, so I think live is really evolving, and if we take a look back at where we were around 2008, when live kind of came into the scene, and we're talking about premium content, it was mostly via SVOD services and TV Everywhere services, and so that was fairly limited in terms of what you could actually do with live, because it all was kind of happening within the familiar traditional TV ecosystem. But these days, there's actually much more you can do with live, and many more ways you can monetize. And so I think, first of all, the ability to run advertising on live delivery is becoming much easier. And it's some people might listen, hear this sentence and think it's obvious, but it's actually not, because live for a long time was really challenging when it came to inserting ads, especially what we call mid-rolls that are crucial if you think about a sports game, for example, to insert ads exactly when they go into timeout is really, really important, and that's actually really valuable ads because most viewers will actually watch these ads and wait for them to end. So for the longest time, this was challenging on many devices, but now with server-side ad insertion, where everything in terms of the ad insertion happens in the cloud, essentially, it's much easier to do that, and so I think that will really what drives value to live at the moment, as well as the ability to upsell users into freemium tiers as part of the whole kind of SVOD trend that we're seeing and that I talked about before. And also, we're seeing that the business model for cable is changing, and with skinny bundles, essentially the ability to get access to premium live streams on ESPN, for example, is now available at a much lower price point. And if we take a look at the future and what's coming up and go to the next slide, we can see that in the near future, many of us will have their DVR in the cloud. And so we will be able to record these live streams very, very easily, then consume them essentially from anywhere we are. But even more importantly, for us, the people on this call, we'll be able to insert more personalized advertising into these live streams. So even if I came home half an hour after the live broadcast has started and I'm watching it from the very beginning, I may see different ads than the ones that aired for the general public. And this is one more thing that we can do with server-side ad insertion that I mentioned before. And another, I think, interesting way of using live and live technology in the near future is the ability to do what we call simulated live. So essentially create live linear streams by stitching together many VOD standalone entries. And this is nothing new. If you think about history, the way that television has worked, it's always been a series of, for the most part, of pre-recorded assets. But the ability to do this online and the ability to do this for even the smallest publishers out there is something that is now available. And you can actually see there in the picture. This is a service called Kaltura TV, and it's a really cool service. I'm happy to plug them in because they're not a Kaltura customer or anything. But what they're doing essentially is creating these 24/7 linear streams using YouTube assets and other assets, and so they're able to create very, very specific linear channels. And so if you can see there in the picture, it says dogs 24/7, cats 24/7. I guess that's exciting to some people. My favorite linear channel is the Miley Cyrus 24/7 channel. Others might have their own. But I think if you think about publishers today, they can take all their massive VOD library and create really cool live channels and monetize these live channels the way that I talked about before. And so this will really allow them to reuse their content and maximize the monetization of their content in a whole new way.
So it seems to me that another big driver is mobile. Can you comment on that? I think you've done a couple of mobile installations of Vodafone in Spain, for example. Can you talk about what you did there?
Sure. So Vodafone Spain is a Kaltura customer, and I think it's a really great example of how mobile is key. So the way that Vodafone Spain before Kaltura had a thriving cable business using TiVo set-top boxes, and they are now using us to essentially go over the top and allow users to stream about 40 live channels using Kaltura applications and using our management system. And you can see there inside the tablet the Barcelona players, and that's actually the content that they're promoting, and that really helps them to kind of drive people to subscribe to their service, their OTT service, because they have the rights to the European League Championship games, and so people are very eager to get access to this content wherever they are. And so with us, they're able to stream this content to many more people across mobile devices. And this, of course, brings in all the different challenges that we talked about before when it comes to the scale. But thank you to our CDN partners and transcoding partners who were able to do millions of streams, concurrent streams, and really provide a great experience when streaming those games across all mobile devices.
Yes, sport seems to be really a galvanizing driver here in online, and I noticed this morning that YouTube will actually be carrying the Champions League final, and I think that takes place this weekend, courtesy of BT. So, and of course, the World Cup is always a big driver of growth in bandwidth, right, Noreen?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, sports is if you look at the past history for Akamai, sports have been our key central focus just recently, but I think it's gonna, as we move forward, sports might not be the only live content that we start viewing. There's a lot of stuff that's coming, whether it's news-oriented or even social media for these, or we're seeing also content that's being created especially just for online. It's mostly VOD at this point, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see more live content created just for online.
Yeah, and we're already seeing a deal of that already, of course, and with Periscope, live is everywhere these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
But let's turn our attention to quality a little bit. I think it probably behooves us to talk about that. I mean, that's obviously one incredibly important part of the live experiences. Yeah, it's one thing to actually deliver live, but it's another thing to deliver with extremely good quality, right, Noreen?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, quality is really synonymous with a lot of the things that Akamai is really working on. Because Akamai is invested in providing the highest quality video streaming at scale, we've been doing a lot of different innovations to support this effort. And we've been investing in media, what we're calling media acceleration technologies that enable customers to achieve the broadcast quality live streaming over broadband. This technology basically is utilizing a UDP-based transport along with the network coding schemes to get that reliability of TCP along with the throughput of UDP. So ultimately, this enables a higher quality, more stable viewing experiences with a lot fewer bitrate shifts and less buffering to provide that more TV-like or even better than TV viewing experience. And all of that obviously results in longer viewing times, and the longer viewing times drive monetization for our ad-supported services. It increases the number of ads placed for the subscriber or subscription model, and it makes the service obviously a lot more stickier. So Akamai's media acceleration, we've really, the way we've invested in it is as many of you probably already know, we've acquired a company called Octoshape in 2015, and that's helping drive the quality and network efficiency. So today Akamai has launched several media acceleration products into our product portfolio, which provides customers an initial introduction to the technologies for live streaming use cases.
So actually, now might be a really good time to insert another question from the audience, and that is the issue of multicast versus unicast. So, I mean, briefly, multicast means the same stream is being watched by many people. This is a bit like broadcast works today. Unicast means a single stream is being sent to a single individual, and that's the way actually most live delivery is done on the web today, where it's person to person or point to point, if you like. So Noreen, can I ask you, can you talk a little bit about multicast versus unicast and where we are with that?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we're definitely very focused on, and Akamai is heavily investing in these technologies. There's a lot of moving parts. It's not something simple that happens overnight, but ultimately the media acceleration will become features of existing media products that will include things like Unicast and Multicast. It's something that, viewers at the end, the end viewers will be affected very heavily, and this is something that will help us really reduce all of the broadband congestions and off-peak hours. It could be something that would offload a lot of the congestion that happens on networks. So it's definitely something that Akamai is heavily investing in. It's something that we plan to evolve in between the course of 2016 and 2017, and to reduce all the different latencies and packet losses and increase viewing time. So this goes back to the amount of terabits needed across our network. This is part of a deeper integration and investment of why we made a purchase like we did with Octoshape, is to bring those types of technologies to our customers and to the end users.
And could you just explain briefly why is there so much bandwidth savings between Unicast and Multicast?
Yeah, I mean, so if you can imagine, there's a lot of off-peak time where you could capture the multicast and the unicast feeds. There's a lot of technology that's built into the Octoshape. I'm not a technical person, so I wouldn't be able to go into it. But basically, there's this technology helps offload a lot of this traffic and makes the entire throughput and bandwidth issues a lot seamless. So when you are delivering, a live feed of something, when you unicast it or multicast it, you're putting it in a place that can, you're caching it at the very end, possibly at the very much closer to the end user. So that way the quality and the buffering issues is a lot less, and it's a lot more stable environment for the end user to have that without taking over a lot of the congestion and bandwidth that's required to do that in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you can just make massive savings, because if 10 people request using Unicast, you got 10 streams, but if you're using Multicast, it's still only one stream. So you're
offloading.
Yeah, it seems to scale much better. So Ido, can you talk a little bit about key considerations for successful live?
Sure. So, I mean, I think that the question of scale is obviously a very important one that you can handle with a strong CDN like Akamai. But there are a few others that I think are worth talking about. The first one is fast live to VOD workflow, because the content that the most valuable content, I think, is especially if you take a sports event, for example, is live, right? So the minute this happens, the minute this is on the web, it's most valuable, and then it will start devaluating within seconds, essentially. So if you can take highlights, for example, of a touchdown and push it over the web, via Twitter, for example, within 30 seconds, you will have a crazy amount of people playing this and watching an ad that you can put in front of it. But if you wait 5, 6, or more than that minutes, then you will see the numbers drop. So the ability to capture that and turn that around very quickly is really important. We talked a little bit about the importance of creating 24 live channels, and I think we'll see more live channels. One more consideration to think about here is, from the user's perspective, it really allows users to go back to the lean-back experience that I think all of us know and love from traditional TV. So the ability to just turn on, for example, the Ellen DeGeneres channel, and just to see Ellen DeGeneres interviews, for example, and just have that constantly playing on the web, I think, is something that a lot of Ellen DeGeneres fans would really like. And I can think of a lot of cool content that can be packaged in this way to be able to offer it in a whole new way within 24/7 linear channels. Also, on-the-fly DRM is something that we're seeing getting more and more interest in the market, something that Kaltura is able to do today. Because of the number of DRM standards out there, and of course because of live is it's happening at this very moment, it's very important to be able to do DRM encryption in real time. And so, especially if we're talking about premium content and you don't want to see these being pirated very quickly by other websites out there, you need to make sure to find the DRM technology that will be able to do this encryption on the fly. Obviously, talked about the strong CDN importance, and then obviously the ability to track quality of service. So there are a few services out there. I think Akamai is doing a great job in this realm to be able to tell you in real time how your feeds are performing, and more important than that, to actually solve problems in real time. Because as you mentioned at the beginning, Colin, if the image stutters, or if God forbidden, you see like buffering at some point, people get really upset because we're all kind of spoiled by the cable and the satellite TV experience that rarely has these types of issues. And so if we really want live over the top to be as great as traditional TV, we need to make sure to maintain a good quality of service.
Yes, indeed. And actually, I'm glad you brought up quality of service, because we should talk about that. It's like it's not easy figuring out how well your service is doing, right, Noreen? But you're working on that.
Yes, absolutely. So Akamai has been really doing a lot of work around what's called our Broadcast Operations Control Center. For many of you who were at NAB, we were actually really happy. We were pleased we won Best at Show for what we're calling the BOC in Las Vegas last month. It's something that really differentiates our delivery from the competition. The whole mission of the BOC is to provide that rapid response to customers, the mitigation, the root cause analysis of why this is happening. So BOC is basically a brand new monitoring and support service epicenter that ensures effective real-time density monitoring 24/7 for our customers. It really was something that was requested by a lot of our broadcasters. We know a lot of broadcasters have their own box, let's say, but it was conceived for Akamai's top broadcasters in mind to be able to customize and own that immersive, high-quality, optimal viewer experience, and to help them support that. So we are doing. We've really built this out with both, a support model. Some of the key challenges for broadcasting, the crowded OTT space needs that flawless, better than broadcast viewing experiences. So we're offering this broadcaster to stay close, to be able to closely monitor and troubleshoot their content from encoder to delivery, especially for live and linear content. And we have round-the-clock monitoring and troubleshooting. So the BOC has provides things like quick mitigations, workflow assessments, constant customer updates, and so on. This is something we've been really working on and really proud of. It's staffed by a dedicated team of broadcast specialists, and we're very, very excited about it.
And if people would like to know a little bit more about what's going on there, they can come to the nScreenMedia website. There's an interview with Matt Azardo, who is Director of Media Operations at Akamai, and he talks about that solution in a lot more detail. So just come to the nScreen website and you'll find it right there. And I think we're moving towards the end of the podcast. I would like us to talk just a little bit about monetization. I think that will probably be appropriate now. So, Ido, can you talk a little bit about monetization of these live streams?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we at Kaltura are really trying to power all business models. And traditionally, we came from the online video platform space that was very much dependent on advertising. But obviously, in this day and age, there's many more ways to monetize content. And so I think if I think about live, I really think about three ways of monetizing it. The most interesting one, I think, is the ability to create a freemium service, and I talked a little bit about that at the beginning of the webinar. So we have customers like Motor Trend On Demand, which Motor Trend has been around for a long time, has a very successful publication. They're now going into the video space. And they created a video service that is completely free, but there's also a second tier there that you can subscribe to. And if you subscribe, you get access to live motor races and other content. So I think that's a great way to show how live can actually drive more revenue. Blink, which you can see their logo there, is a company owned by Solar in the Philippines. They actually operate 5 live channels in the Philippines. They also have access to a lot of VOD premium content coming from Hollywood studios. So the way that they build their business model is very interesting. They give their app for free. And if you just register for the app, you don't have to pay anything at that point. You get access to the 5 live channels that they have the rights to, and so that's a great way to watch, obviously, free live TV. But then there are additional tiers there. So they also have the rights to boxing matches, in which they offer as a per-view, and so that's one way for them to kind of monetize users. But then they also offer kind of a Hulu-like, Netflix-like experiences in which you can buy subscription and get access to a lot of other Hollywood content. What we're seeing is that because people keep coming back to the app to watch the live content, which is offered for free, or to buy every now and then a per-view broadcast, the likelihood of them actually subscribing to one of the SVOD offering is much, much higher. So I think that's another good way of looking at live and how live can drive more traction to your business.
So it seems like the freemium idea is particularly interesting. I know there's a big focus at the moment online with subscription VOD, but this seems like a relatively untapped approach. I think probably Hulu is one of the few companies that's actually really employing it. But it seems like there's a lot more that we can do there, right?
Absolutely, and if you look at a company like Facebook, for example, that has really been, pushing live for the last couple of months, it's been reported that they're offering celebrities to do kind of live events on their Facebook pages, for example. So I believe that we're very soon going to see more and more content being offered live, and it will be up to us, the online video platforms, as well as the actual publishers, to make that experience much more interesting. And if we can drive additional interactivity, for example, then I believe people will be much more inclined to pay for SVOD services or per-view broadcast, because it will be interesting content to begin with, but it will also have additional functionality that the web and OTT delivery can offer that traditional TV, cable, satellite can't really offer. And I think that is something that especially Iago and the AdSense are really looking for. And so I'm sure this space is going to continue to evolve.
It seems like the opportunities with simulcast are sort of perfect for this, right? You have a core broadcast, and then you can subscribe and get, I don't know, in-car shots when you're watching a motor race, or back scenes when you're watching the Oscars or something like that. It seems like a perfect opportunity to upsell, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, it's an opportunity to upsell. It's also an opportunity to serve more advertising, because you are able to create interesting content differentiated from what everybody is getting in the one stream that is on TV. And so I think, you know, it really gives publishers a way to use much more of their content, and that's the beauty about live. There's so much, you know, content being produced these days because it's much cheaper to produce. So live just gives you much more flexibility and more avenues to actually use it.
Indeed. So there was a question from the audience that I think probably, Noreen, you can take a swing at, and that is, you know, one of the things I think consumers are pretty used to doing is flipping channels. So going between channels. It seems like that could be tough to handle if you're online. Am I right in thinking that? Are we making any progress there with flipping between live streams?
Sure. I mean, this is all really goes back to what the broadcasters are. So we have things, you know, people like, or companies like Netflix or Sling TV or Amazon. All of those companies are very cognizant and aware of why they have to not only match the current TV broadband, but also exceed it. So whether that means not the quality or the how you find the content, all of these, I think it's still an evolving ecosystem, that there's a lot of challenges that are still left, but they will be figured out, and it will get to a point where, you know, and people are predicting that's going to happen very soon in the next few years, where the online viewing is going to exceed the time spent online, will eventually exceed the time being spent on traditional broadcast. When that will happen exactly, nobody knows, but things, you know, challenges just like this, flipping between channels, making sure that the first frame or startup time is when you press that go or play button looks exactly like it looks like on TV. The image quality, whether it's the bit rates, there's no buffering that you would see that we used to see online. All of those things are challenges that we have to all overcome in order to keep the audience on our different channels and to keep them engaged. These are the things that are still being figured out. I don't think anybody has answers to all of the questions, but I can pretty much guarantee that things are being figured out at a very fast rate, and it would not surprise me with all that's happening with cord cutting and the millennials not even really thinking about TV anymore, to go straight to online to experience a lot of what the content that they want to view.
And we'll do one more question, and then I think we're just about out of time. Ido, if you could comment just about latency. What sort of latency are we seeing in some of the solutions that you've delivered?
So the latency, the average latency that we're seeing is about 30 seconds at the moment. And we need to, you know, there's a lot of talk about latency, and we're obviously trying to minimize it as much as possible. But when it comes to live delivery, and much of it is, for example, done via a protocol called HLS, the way that the video players work, they need actually a few pieces of content, if you will, in order to start playing the content. And usually they need about 30 seconds of content. And there's also, on top of that, sometimes transcoding takes a few extra seconds there to actually take a live stream and break it down to different renditions, so people on mobile will get a good experience, as well as people that are streaming much higher bitrate because they're viewing the content on their TVs, for example. There are ways to bring it down a little bit more, but it's definitely a challenge for us. If you want to make sure that you provide a great experience, then this latency is at the moment something that you have to deal with. It's a bit better when you're doing just live streams and you want to be able to kind of zip between channels. So there's ways to kind of minimize the latency there. So the zapping experience that we talked about still exists, and there's no buffering there. But in terms of the kind of the built-in latency, it's something that the industry still needs to work on.
All right, thanks very much. Well, I think we're just about out of time, so I'm going to hand it back to Greg to see us out.
Well, thanks, Colin. Thanks, Colin. Excellent job. Appreciate it. Noreen, thanks so much. Ido, appreciate your comments and your insights. Appreciate you, audience, being there with us and all your questions today and your participation. If you want to receive an archived copy of this or view an archived copy of the webinar or pass it along to colleagues and friends, please check back regularly at the nScreenMedia website. Colin should have, as usual, an article posted tomorrow kind of recapping some of the key points of this webinar, and you'll be able to get a copy of it there. So enjoy seeing you out over at nScreenMedia.com. Anyways, thanks so much for attending. We'll keep you posted on future webinars. And again, many thanks, Colin, Noreen, Ido. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.